After the intern they promoted over me triggered a $2 million penalty, my boss tried to pin it on me. I uploaded one Slack message to the screen for the CEO and the entire room went dead silent. "Congratulations to Cassandra for mentoring our newest manager," Darren said, voice soaked in condescension, like syrup over spoiled meat. I blinked once, then twice, because that was how I found out the promotion I'd been working toward for 3 damn years just went to Luke, the intern who once asked if invoices needed to be mailed in an envelope or just emailed with a smiley face. I wish I were joking. The room clapped. I didn't. I sat there, muscles locked in that familiar corporate rigor mortis where your spine wants to scream, but your face just smiles. Luke turned toward me, grinning like a golden retriever with a stapler. "Couldn't have done it without you, Cass." He beamed. "Cass," like we were college buddies, not colleagues. I nodded. I even managed a well-deserved through clenched teeth, which tasted like burnt dignity and black coffee. He wore a blazer with the tag still on the sleeve and called it his power jacket. My eye twitched. "Hey, real quick while we're here, 97% of you are listening to this without subscribing or leaving a like. It takes 2 seconds, but it means the damn world to us and keeps the stories coming. Plus, if I gotta relive this office nightmare, might as well have some backup, right?" Back to Luke. He had no credentials, no experience, and no idea how supply chains worked. He did play pickleball with Darren and once brought gluten-free cupcakes to the team meeting. That seemed to be the secret sauce. Meanwhile, I had orchestrated 6 vendor restructures, 3 emergency reroutes during hurricane season, and once caught a $400K discrepancy in a contract clause before lunch. But, apparently, what they needed now was fresh energy. Darren's words, not qualified leadership, not institutional knowledge, just fresh energy. I should have just chugged a Celsius and done jumping jacks in the conference room. Darren pulled me into his office after the meeting, window blinds drawn, his signature move when he was about to patronize someone. He did that lean back and share thing like he was on a podcast. "I know this may sting a little," he said, voice soft like I was a rescued bird, "but I need you to think of this as a long-term play. Luke brings agility. You bring stability. Together, it's the future." I stared at him, silently calculating how many paper clips I'd need to forge a shiv. He kept talking. "Look, this is a compliment. We don't need to supervise you. You're rock solid. But, Luke, he's the kind of guy who can shake things up. You ever feel like you're being buried alive under corporate buzzwords? Like someone's tossing dirt on your reputation while calling it a growth opportunity?" I nodded. Again, that was my thing. Nod and survive. I walked out with my mentorship badge of honor and headed to my desk where my inbox was already flooded with meeting requests Luke had scheduled for me to brief him on things he should already know. I could feel the tectonic shift in the office vibe. People glanced at me with sympathy smiles or worse, relief that it wasn't them. That's the thing about corporate betrayal. It doesn't come with blood. It comes with calendar invites, so I got quiet. I got careful. Started saving everything, emails, approvals, Slack threads. I wasn't sure yet what storm was brewing, but I knew one thing for damn certain. If Luke was the ship and Darren was the captain, then I was the lighthouse. And, eventually, someone was going to crash. 2 weeks into Luke's reign as the boy king of ops, Darren called an all-hands huddle. "We're pivoting vendor strategy," he declared, standing in front of the whiteboard like Moses with a Sharpie. "Current contract is bloated. Legacy deadweight. We need partners who move fast." Translation. Darren wanted a flashy slide for the Q3 review, and Luke found a vendor on LinkedIn who had a TikTok presence and once delivered overnight freight using scooters in Austin. They were planning to dump a longtime supplier, one we'd worked with for nearly a decade, who, yeah, wasn't sexy, but actually delivered. And more importantly, the clause buried in their agreement so strict that one misstep meant a breach fine so fat it could bankrupt a startup. I opened my mouth during the meeting. "Have we had legal look over the termination clause?" I asked. Luke waved a printout in the air. I skimmed it. "It's mostly boilerplate." I stared at him. Boilerplate is not a word you use for contracts that involve bonded freight and cross-border customs clearances. That's like calling a live grenade standard decor. After the meeting, I followed up like a damn professional. Sent 3 emails over the next 48 hours. Subject: urgent compliance concerns on vendor shift. "Hi, Darren. Looping in legal might be smart here. Section 6B of our agreement with Redline contains breach penalties tied to 90-day exclusivity windows. Terminating without proper notice could trigger a fee. Just want to make sure we've dotted I's and crossed T to K's. Cassandra." No reply. Sent another subject: follow-up. Vendor contract risk re. Earlier note: flag some legal exposure if we move forward without transition compliance. Do we have coverage from legal on this? Cassandra. Still nothing. Then finally, a reply came. Not via email on Slack, public thread. Darren R. 11:24 a.m. Cassandra, appreciate the caution, but we're prioritizing agility right now. Let legal worry about that. We're moving ahead. I stared at the screen. Let legal worry about that. That was the moment the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. You don't tell legal to worry about things later when a contract says breach equals $2 meters liquidated damages. I replied something short, neutral. Just enough to have it on record. Cassandra T. 11:27 a.m. Copy that. Please note I previously flagged the risk in Section 6B. We'll proceed as directed. That was the start of my slow exclusion. Meeting invites that used to include me, gone. Vendor onboarding calls, suddenly internal only. Darren patted my shoulder in the hall and said, "Don't worry, Cass. We'll loop you back in for postmortem review." Postmortem cute. Like the body wasn't still breathing. Luke strutted around the floor with a new clicky badge holder and talked about killing sacred cows. I watched him accidentally forward a blank invoice to our AP team and then blame the system lag. Darren called it growing pains. Meanwhile, I was organizing my own kind of pain. I created a folder on my home desktop called Breadcrumbs. Into it went the emails, the Slack screenshot, the vendor contract, the date they announced the shift, the date I sent the first warning. I didn't know what I'd need. I just knew when the water gets choppy. Better be the one holding the damn lifeboat. It hit on a Tuesday. A calendar alert popped up, emergency ops sync, mandatory. And I knew before I even clicked that something had gone sideways. Not a little sideways like a mislabeled pallet. No. This had the quiet nuclear of a full-blown disaster. By the time I walked into the conference room, the air was thick with panic sweat and overcompensating cologne. Luke was already there, pale and jittery, cupping his pen so fast it sounded like Morse code for "I'm not ready for prison." Darren stood by the window, staring out like a war general mid-tragedy, even though the only thing reflected in the glass was his own incompetence. "Thanks for joining, Cassandra," he said. Like, I've been invited to a brunch instead of summoned to clean up his career-ending mess. "We have a situation." The situation was this. Redline Freight, our loyal high-volume logistics partner, had served us with a breach notice, $2 million, payable immediately. Apparently, terminating our contract without a proper 90-day written notice, which I had mentioned repeatedly, had triggered an automatic penalty clause. It wasn't just a fee. It was a punishment baked into the deal like a ticking landmine for morons with superiority complexes. And guess who dug it up with both hands? Aaron gestured toward the screen like a magician revealing a beheaded rabbit. The PDF glowed in large font. Liquidated damages due upon contract breach. $2 million. No red line edits. No ambiguity. Just a bold, devastating number. Luke squirmed in his chair. "I thought we had a grace period," he mumbled, like a kid who just found out infinite lives doesn't apply to real life. Darren shook his head dramatically, assumed this had been flagged. He turned to me almost casually. "You were CC'd on the early threads. Right? There it was. The first drop of poison. Sorry. We assumed you had flagged this." I blinked slow. "Yes, I was CC'd," I said evenly, "and I did flag it 3 times via email." He waved a hand. "Right? But nothing really forceful, right? I mean, you didn't escalate." I stared at him like he'd just grown a third nostril. Darren used the subject line "urgent compliance concerns" on vendor shift. He didn't blink, just leaned on the table with fake empathy. "Look, I'm not pointing fingers here. I just think we all need to own our piece." That was rich coming from the man who once said accountability is a team sport after deleting a metrics file and blaming IT. Luke looked like he might puke into his reusable coffee cup. I took a breath. My pulse had spiked. My expression didn't flinch. This was no longer about hurt feelings. This was about survival. "I'm happy to forward the emails again," I said, voice level, along with the Slack thread where you said, and I quote, "Let legal worry about that." Darren's jaw flickered, a micro-clench. It was small, but I saw it. "Oh," he said. "Well, that was context-specific." I nodded slowly. "Sure." That night, I reopened the breadcrumbs folder, created subfolders, emails, Slack, vendor clause, damage summary. I also added a new file, timeline of escalation, color-coded, time-stamped, cross-referenced with meeting invites and Slack threads. This wasn't just about receipts anymore. This was about strategy. I didn't know when it would come, but I knew there would be a meeting. And when they tried to turn me into the scapegoat, I'd be ready to drop the guillotine with proof. The whisper campaign started the next morning as all corporate backstubs do. Quiet, informal, deniable. First came the offhand questions from the finance team. "Hey, Cass. Just circling back. You were involved in the vendor transition, right? Darren said you were looped in early." Looped in. Like, I'd been joyriding on a clown car of negligence instead of warning them from the sidelines like a damn prophet. Then the CFO stopped by my desk doing that faux-friendly lean on the cubicle wall. "Just doing some internal post-mortem cleanup," he said, sipping a smoothie that probably cost more than my office chair. "Darren mentioned you had concerns but weren't, strongly opposed." I met his eyes. I flagged it in writing multiple times. "It's all in the thread." He nodded that slow political nod people do when they're already filing you under problematic. The goal was Olympic level. Darren, the same man who told me let legal worry about that, is now positioning himself as the blindsided leader betrayed by my silence. And Luke was unraveling like a poorly knotted tie. He'd stopped strutting and started hovering. One moment, he was pretending to be up here. The next, he was dropping by my desk with the emotional stability of a balloon in a lightning storm. "Hey, Cass," he said one afternoon, voice brittle. "You know, I didn't mean to throw you under the bus, right? I didn't say anything to Darren. I just didn't know it was that serious." I looked up from my screen, face blank. "Uh-huh, I mean," he continued, voice cracking like cheap vinyl. "I thought we were on the same page." Same page. I was reading contracts. He was drawing cartoons in the margins, but I smiled. "It's okay, Luke. I get it. New role. Lots of pressure. These things happen." He let out a breath like I'd handed him a flotation device. That was the exact moment I knew I could break him if I wanted to, but I didn't. Not yet. I needed his fear. Useful fear. The kind that makes people careless with their words. Over the next few days, I let him talk, let him confess, let him ramble in Slack messages about how Darren pushed things too fast and how this vendor thing got way out of hand. I never prompted. I just reacted with supportive emojis and mild comments like, "Yeah, it's been a lot lately." Meanwhile, I downloaded the full Slack thread, the one with the original exchange. My warning, Darren's brush off. I opened a blank email, attached the PDF, and sent it to my personal Gmail. Subject line, insurance, no body text, no fluff, just a single line in the attachment, Cassandra T, right arrow, Darren R. 11:27 a.m. Copy that. Please note I previously flagged the risk in section 6B. I watched the progress bar crawl to 100%, then I exhaled. My hands were steady, my breath even, but under the surface, rage, cold pressurized rage, the kind that doesn't scream or explode. It just waits, and I knew Darren was going to keep digging, keep spinning. Let him. I'd already picked out the spot where I'd plant the landmine. The invite hit my inbox at 6:42 a.m. Subject: urgent Q3 vendor fallout debrief attendees. CEO, CFO, legal, Darren R. Lukage. Cassandra T. Time: 11 a.m. Executive conference room. A no agenda. No attachments. Just dread. My mouse hovered over the accept button for a second longer than necessary. I clicked it with the kind of calm you learn after years of being thrown into fires you didn't start. At 8:03 a.m., Darren appeared behind me like a debt collector in a horror film. "Morning, Cass," he said, tone syrupy and managerial. "Wanted to personally ask that you be at today's meeting. It's important we're aligned on messaging." I finished for him, swiveling to face him. He chuckled like I was in on the joke. "Exactly. Just walk them through your involvement. You know? Reassure leadership. Clarify where the wires crossed." Wires didn't cross. Yank them out and use them to jumpstart his little golden intern. I nodded, all professionalism, of course. By 10:20, I was already in the executive room. Lights low, screen humming, chairs still pushed in like good little soldiers. I picked the one closest to the AV console and took my time plugging in my laptop. HDMI ready, volume tested, Slack message queued in a full-screen browser tab, even zoomed in the font 150% theater mode. Let him read. As 11 o'clock approached, the sharks arrived. CFO first, frown lines deeper than usual, then legal, tight-lipped, and carrying a laptop like a scalpel. Luke shuffled the next, visibly sweating through his knockoff button-down, avoiding my gaze. Good. Then Darren, freshly shaved and smug, holding a leather folio like it contained state secrets and not his own obituary. And finally, CEO, calm, sharp, the kind of guy who doesn't say much until the silence his teeth. We all sat. Darren took the floor before anyone asked. "Appreciate everyone making time. I wanted to be transparent about the vendor issue and the timeline." He clicked open a sanitized PowerPoint, bullet points, passive verbs, a few charts. We identified a gap in compliance review. And while Luke acted with enthusiasm, there was, admittedly, lack of senior oversight on certain communication loops. He turned to me. "That's why I asked Cassandra here to help walk us through where perhaps those concerns could have been more clearly escalated." Ah, there it was. The baited hook dipped in varnish. I blinked. Calm, composed, then gently turned my laptop toward the AV panel. One-click screen mirrored. Slack popped up. Full screen. Bright, clear, time-stamped. Cassandra T. 10:06 a.m. "Darren, I'm flagging this as non-compliant with Section 6B. We need legal's approval before proceeding." Darren R. 10:08 a.m. "Let legal worry about that. We're moving ahead." No commentary, no animation, just silence so thick it felt like static in the bloodstream. The CEO leaned forward. "Is this real-time Slack archive?" "Yes," I said. "All time stamped and exported." I turned to Darren, just looked at him, said nothing. His face flushed beneath the collar. Contextually, there was a broader conversation happening. Legal cut in. "Darren, did you ever forward this to our team?" His mouth opened, closed. The CEO sat back, arms folded, noted. I didn't smile. I didn't move. This was the slow drag of the blade, and I wasn't done yet. Darren shifted his weight, adjusted his cufflinks like he was preparing to deliver a TED Talk instead of trying to dodge career annihilation. He clicked away from my Slack display, claiming the screen with his bland corporate slide deck. Before we over-index on any one exchange, he began, already greasing the rails, I think it's important to acknowledge the broader dynamics at play here. The room stiffened. Legal's fingers hovered over their keyboard. The CFO leaned back, eyes narrowing. Darren's voice dropped to a practiced tone of regretful wisdom. What happened with the red line contract wasn't one person's fault. It was a failure of process, yes, also a failure of energy balance. Luke brought tremendous initiative to the table. He was enthusiastic, hungry, but in that enthusiasm, certain guardrails were bypassed. He threw Luke under the bus with the flair of a Broadway understudy, finally getting a spotlight. Luke didn't protest. He just stared at the table like it might open up and swallow him. Darren continued, now walking slowly in front of the screen like a self-appointed preacher of process. In hindsight, we also saw breakdowns on the senior side. Cassandra was included in early discussions. She's respected, competent without question, but there was an absence of escalation, a lack of clarity. That silence, however unintentional, contributed to the misunderstanding. Ah, there it was. The masterstroke, praise laced with poison, respected, competent, but somehow also too silent. He let the sentence linger like a fart in a boardroom. Then like clockwork, all eyes turned to me. My face didn't twitch, my breath didn't hitch. I leaned forward slowly like a bow being pulled to full tension. I think everyone should see this. I turned my laptop back toward the screen. Click no words, just light and evidence. Slack, full screen, no annotations. Just Cassandra T 10:06 a.m. Darren, I'm flagging this as non-compliant with Section 6B. We need legal's approval before proceeding. Darren R 10:08 a.m. Let legal worry about that. We're moving ahead. The timestamp, the tone, the damning clarity. I didn't add commentary. I didn't need to. Let the facts rot the fruit. The room went still. You could hear the HVAC over the tension. Luke blinked rapidly like he was trying to wake up from a nightmare. The CFO swiveled toward legal, murmuring, that's not ambiguous. Darren's throat bobbed. He opened his mouth then closed it again. CEO leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands clasped. Is that accurate, Darren? And in that pause, those 3 eternal seconds, I watched a man realize the elevator cable had snapped, and he was in free fall. The screen stayed frozen, Slack in all its minimalist glory. No animations. No distractions. Just brutal clinical truth. My warning. Darren's dismissal. Time stamped with the accuracy of a bullet. Nobody breathed. Eagle leaned forward like they were inspecting a crime scene. The CFO let out a breath through his nose, sharp, deliberate. Luke looked like he was trying to mentally time travel back to whatever moment he said, boilerplate's fine, right? The CEO didn't move at first. He just stared at the screen like it had personally insulted his intelligence. Then slow and deliberate, he turned to Darren. Is this accurate? The words hung in the air like frostbite. Darren opened his mouth, closed it, blinked like a deer watching the grill of a semi approach. There was context to that conversation. He began voice dry. It was a fast-moving situation, and I believed we had legal safety nets in place at the time. The CEO didn't blink. Did you forward this to legal silence? Darren tried again. Well, I assumed Cassandra would escalate if there were serious risks. I thought no. I cut in quietly. Told me to let legal worry about that. That was your exact wording. We can scroll up if you'd like. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. I just let the quiet do the carving. The CEO turned to legal. Would that directive have warranted escalation on Cassandra's part? Legal shook their head. No. Not if her objection was clearly stated and leadership overrode it. The obligation to consult legal lies with whoever initiates the risk. In this case, Darren's ears flushed a vivid cartoon red. The CFO rubbed his temples. This was a $2 meters error. We didn't loop in compliance. We didn't loop in legal. And we had Cassandra sitting right there flagging it in advance. Luke shifted like maybe he was going to speak, then thought better of it. Smart. The CEO didn't raise his voice. He didn't pound the table or threaten lawsuits. He just let the silence do its slow, savage work. Thank you, Cassandra. He said finally, that'll be enough for now. I nodded, closed my laptop, slid it into my bag. No celebration. No vindication parade. Just a razor-thin line of satisfaction humming under my ribs because sometimes the cleanest kills come with no noise at all. Let the silence bury him. By the end of the week, Luke's desk was cleared out. No fanfare. No announcement. Just a vague HR memo about a mutual decision to part ways and a manager walking him to the elevator like a man escorting a sad golden retriever to the vet. He didn't even look at me on his way out. Didn't say goodbye. Just clutched his little box of succulents and notebooks full of doodles like a child walking away from a busted lemonade stand. Darren, on the other hand, stayed. But his badge didn't open as many doors anymore. His calendar slowly turned into a ghost town. The Slack mentions stopped. Meetings were rescheduled. He was on administrative review, which in corporate speak is a gentle prelude to a bullet between the eyes. And me, I got the email. Subject, interim transition support, Cassandra. As we evaluate internal leadership structures, we'd appreciate your support in temporarily managing vendor operations and compliance oversight. Your institutional knowledge has proven invaluable. Let us know if you need resources. There was no congratulations, no title change, no raise, just a paper-thin thank you stapled to a pile of broken systems I was now expected to duct tape together. I didn't respond, not yet. Instead, I closed the email, stood, walked down the hallway with my heels clicking like a metronome for someone's funeral march. Destination, IT. I walked in, nodded to Mark, the network engineer who once gave me his Netflix login during a snowstorm, and said, I need admin access to Darren's internal files, his laptop, Slack archive, all of it, I'll CC legal. Mark didn't even blink. Already cleared it this morning, he said. They're expecting you. In 10 minutes, I had the access. In 20, I had duplicated every relevant compliance log, Slack thread, vendor memo into a locked folder titled Dr. Exit. I encrypted it, backed it up, sent a mirrored copy to legal with no commentary, just the subject line per request internal review materials. Then I opened my calendar and created a meeting. Subject, Darren transition debrief/offboarding prep time, Monday 9 a.m. attendees, Cassandra T., HR lead, legal rep, Darren R. I didn't send it just yet, just sat with it open. Watched the little block of time sit on my screen like a loaded gun because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about order. An order starts with locking the door on the man who left it wide open for chaos. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. HR's glass-walled conference room had that disinfected, performative calm you only get before a firing or a rebrand. The lights hummed. The chairs were too new. Silence was the kind that grew roots. I was already there, seated at the head of the table, folder closed, pen capped, coffee untouched. The door creaked open. Darren walked in wearing the same blazer from his promotion day, the one with the faint coffee stain near the cuff. He gave me a weak little smile, that same old charm offensive he used on interns and vendor reps. Morning, he said, voice trying too hard. Didn't expect to see you in this one, Cass. I didn't respond. I just met his eyes cold and still. He chuckled thin and cracking. Well, I guess this is the part where we hug it out and talk about lessons learned. Right? He tugged on his collar like the room was too warm. I opened the folder. No ceremony. Just flipped it slow and quiet so the single sheet inside faced him. Exit checklist Darren R., printed in bold, clean font. Below it, shortlist, return laptop transfer remaining documentation, disable Slack/email accounts, complete HR debrief, submit final expense report. He stared at it like it was written in a language he no longer spoke. I leaned forward slightly, voice even. You told me my caution made me obsolete, I said. Turns out it made me essential. I didn't smile. He didn't blink. I pushed the checklist toward him, corner sliding across the polished table like a guillotine being lowered. He reached for it with a trembling hand, still trying to compose himself like the room might reverse if he just gripped the paper tight enough. I stood. Let me know if you need help logging out, I said. Cool and clear. Then I turned, walked to the door, heels clicking sharp and final. Left it open behind me, not for him, for the draft. Let it carry out the last of his smoke and mirrors. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Some exits don't need applause. Just silence and a locked account. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.